So July is over, and that means it's time for a wrap up. Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alex, and today is my July 2023 wrap up. So I'm going to talk about the books I read in July with my ratings. If you're new here, I typically do spoiler free for all my wrap ups and everything. I'm very careful not to ruin books for you and just kind of give you an overview and whether I liked it or didn't and where it kind of fell on my rating scale. So, a little refresher for my rating scale. 5 stars means it's perfection. I have no issues with it. I absolutely loved it and I'll recommend it to everybody. 4 stars means I did really like it still, but I had some issues. Maybe pace, maybe characters, something like that. But I still really liked the book and I will recommend it. 3 stars means I didn't really like it, but it was a subjectivity issue. Like there wasn't anything wrong with the book, it just wasn't really for me. I was not the target audience, we'll just say. 2 stars, I didn't like it and I won't recommend it to anyone. 1 star is the worst of the worst. I absolutely regret picking up the book and I probably won't ever read the author again. So, that's a little refresher. Make sure you hit all the buttons down below so you know when I'm posting. I post every week and all we do on this channel is talk about books. So if you like listening to people talk about books, here I am every week doing just that for you. I will say this month's reading list really veered off the intended path. At the end of every month I make the maybes list, and then I usually pick from there, and then I get one wild card book that's with my book club. This month there was quite a few wild card books. I think I only read 1 book from my maybes list for July, and the rest were either from other lists, and then there was one that was a complete outlier, and then my book club book. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. So it's actually raining today, like right outside my window. We've been having these like pop-up storms for like 2 weeks now. Now I'm gonna say like, oh, it looks so beautiful outside. I know it's not beautiful outside. I know it's like really humid and gross outside, but it looks beautiful outside. And it's like really cloudy, and the rain is coming down in like these big beautiful sheets. Anyways, if you hear some like thunder or stuff, it's like it's raining. That's what's happening. Mixed with the lovely highway sounds and the sound of my fan, like you probably wouldn't even be able to hear it. Anyway, okay, so the first book that I read in July was The Never King by Nikki Crowe. I did this on audiobook, and let me tell y'all, the audiobook completely rocked. Like, it was so well done because it had multiple narrators. This is the first audiobook I've done that had multiple narrators. And I'm not just talking about 2 narrators. I think it had 4, maybe 5, at least 4 different narrators. I thought it was really well done. I absolutely loved the audiobook on this. So if you're contemplating doing the audiobook, I highly recommend it for this one because it just really delivered. This is a Peter Pan retelling. It's very sexual. Like, it's just smut. It's dirty. Like, I really, really liked it. And the premise of it was a little bit different than typical Peter Pan and Wendy. So, basically, every year that a darling girl turns 18, she gets kidnapped by Peter Pan and taken to Neverland. And then when they come back, they've basically lost their minds. So this darling, and I can't remember her name. I'm sorry. I listened to it so long ago, it feels like. She's about to turn 18. She's like on the cusp of her 18th birthday, and she's like dealing with her mom that's lost her mind because she's also a darling that's been taken and returned. And just preparing for Peter to come and take her, and then he does take her, and she goes to Neverland, and we find out what happens to darling women when they get taken by Peter Pan to Neverland. Okay, so I will say this is a fairly dark retelling of Peter Pan. A lot of dark themes, like I said, very highly sexualized, if you like that kind of stuff. So I absolutely love this. To me, it had a really nice mix of porn and plot. because it was very smutty. But I liked the plot line of it. Like, I liked the setup for it. This is a series that I will be continuing. I think it left it on a really nice cliffhanger. Like, it wrapped up the story enough that it didn't feel cheated, but it definitely opened it up to the possibilities of what's to come. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. And the reason it didn't get 5 was because one of the narrators I didn't like. But honestly, like, that was really the only reason. There was, like, one character that I felt like I wanted a little bit more information on, but it didn't really end up mattering by the end of it. So, yeah, it got 4 stars from me. Let me tell you all, the reviews on this book are highly mixed. Like, there's a lot of people that, like, really, really loved it, and then there's a lot of people that really, really hated it. And I feel like there was not a lot of middle ground there. The biggest complaint I saw from the people that didn't like it was that they didn't feel like the world was developed enough for them to enjoy. Let me tell you, this is not high fantasy. If you read high fantasy, and that's what you want, this will not give you that. I don't like high fantasy, I'm going to admit that now. So, and I don't enjoy really reading that. So, this was really nice for me because it didn't spend 100 pages building out the world. I didn't feel like I needed it. We've all been to Neverland enough times by now, right? We all have this picture of Neverland in our heads. And I feel like Nikki St. Crowe put the foundation for you there and let you fill it into your own imagination, which I really liked. I know a lot of people don't particularly like that kind of thing, but I kind of do. I just felt like we didn't need more description of Neverland. Like, I've read lots of retellings. I've seen plenty of Peter Pan movies. Like, I feel like Neverland all has the same feel, and so I didn't feel like anything was missing there, but she didn't go out of her way to overbuild the world, you know? Anyway, if you want high fantasy, this isn't it. Okay? Just go in prepared for that. This is not high fantasy. This is not even a huge book. It's fairly small, okay? I think the audiobook for it was only like 6 hours or something. Like, it's very short. So, I mean, you go into it knowing it can't have a lot, you know, because it's small. I think if you're not too worried about tons of world building, you'd really like this. And if you're there for the smut, you'll also really like this. It did have a nice dark undercurrent, which for me really, really worked. I will be continuing this series, and I really liked it. The next book I read in July was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This was chosen for my book club. This might be one of the best thrillers I've read this year because this was really, really good, okay? The premise of this, like, set it up to be really interesting, and then the book completely exceeded all of my expectations. I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but it was not that. It was so much bigger and so much better than I thought it was going to be. Okay, let's just start with that. We have a main character, female main character, and she's got a little family, husband, 16-year-old, 17-year-old son, maybe he's 18, now I can't remember, but young adult son, and a life-changing event happens, and just before it happens, she gets this utter devastating sense of deja vu. Life-changing event happens. She goes to sleep, devastated. And when she wakes up, she's in the day before the devastating event happens. And every morning that she wakes up, she continues to go further back in time. And she has to figure out the root cause of this devastating event to see if she can change and prevent that event from happening. At first glance, I was like, oh, it's like a Groundhog Day type book. No, it's so much better. So much better. The layers that Gillian McAllister was able to get for this book blew my mind. Every time I thought I was on top of it, I wasn't. Every time I thought I figured it out, I didn't. It was so much deeper than I thought. And then just like on top of all of this, like she's trying to unravel all this big mystery to like prevent this event from happening. She's like pulling apart her life basically, trying to search for the answer. And as we're getting through there, there's this really nice undercurrent of like motherhood in there, about like societal pressures of being a mother, and like just all that mom guilt that you have constantly. Like I feel like no matter what kind of walk of life you're having, or what kind of motherhood experience you're having, whether you're like a full-time like working mom, or you're a full-time stay-at-home mom, or you're somewhere in between, or you have, you know, you're part-time with another partner from another relationship, anything like that, there's mom guilt all the time about something, sometimes the most like obscure things. And I think there was a really nice undercurrent about motherhood in this book that I just really resonated with, and I really, really liked. And I thought it was just so well done. If you like science fiction, there is like a nice little science fiction edge to it, because we are dealing with like the relativity of time and things like that. But I will say, this is not a multiverse book. So don't go into it thinking it's a multiverse book, because it's definitely not. Which I was kind of happy it wasn't, because if you saw one of my other posts, I think it was last month, I'm a little tired of the multiverse. I can't take much more multiverse stuff right now. So I was really happy that this wasn't that. This was like a completely different look at time, basically. I don't know. I really, really liked it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. And okay, I should have warned you guys, like, I'm so picky about my 5 stars. Like, the book has to be completely incredible with absolutely no issues to get the 5 stars. Here's the thing. Gillian McAllister had the opportunity to get the 5 star. She really did. Like, blew me away. This book just, I really, really, really liked it, alright? And then in the final pages, I felt shorted. Just slightly. Just slightly. Like, I felt a little shorted in the last, like, 10 pages. So, yeah, got the 4 stars. Otherwise, I highly recommend this book. If you really like thrillers, this one, this has to probably be one of the best ones I read this year. So, yeah, highly recommend. The next book I read was Devil in Ohio by Daria Polatin. So, this one has been cycled into the Maybe series a few times. And I finally got it from my library and was able to read it, because I want to finish watching the Netflix series Devil in Ohio, which is based off this book, and this book is based off of true events. So it's kind of like a documentary series with some fictional additives, you know what I mean? So, premise of the book. We have a child psychologist who gets called into the hospital. In the hospital bed is this girl that's been found on the side of the road, severely injured, and is connected to a local cult. The psychologist ends up bringing her into their home to kind of acclimate her to life, in the hopes of sending her to a foster family. This book is primarily told by the daughter of the psychologist, one of the daughters, the middle child, who's the same age as the girl that was found in the hospital. So Jules, our main narrator, is, I think she's like 14, 15, something like that. And the middle child, and she's having to adjust to her mom bringing home this girl that's basically been raised in a cult her whole life, and trying to, like, being forced to help acclimate her to teenage life. Like, her mom throws her into her room, kicks her out. Like, she goes to school one day and her mom shows up with her and she's like, I enrolled her in all your classes so you can show her around. It's like, okay. So she's basically like forced to help acclimate this girl to life. And as we're moving through that, they're getting pieces of her story, and we're trying to figure out, you know, what all happened to her and all of these things. Okay, if you want a cult book, this is not really it. Okay, we do not really get into the cult vibes here. I would really more call this a runaway story almost, because we just don't get the cult story. Which I was really disappointed in, because I absolutely love learning about cults. Reading about cults is like kind of my favorite thing. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't get more cult stuff. So If you're wanting a huge influx of cult information, it's not going to be in here. What this is basically a 15-year-old girl recounting her life living with a girl that was with a cult, and also feeling like she can't find her place in her family with this girl in their life. This really resonated with me in a very weird way, because there was a lot of moments in the book when Jules was just desperate for her mother's attention, and her mother just didn't have the time for her. And so we kind of see Jules slip down this destructive path because she can't get the attention of her mother, and she just wants to be seen, and she feels like she's being pushed to the edge, the peripheral of the family, because this girl has been dropped into their life. So what's the easiest thing to do if this girl is the problem? The easiest thing to do is get rid of the girl, right? This is that story, basically. Now, a lot of bad reviews on this book. I think I said that in one of the Maybe series, which is why I wasn't reading it yet, was because the reviews were not that great. I dug through the reviews, okay? And here was everyone's gripe. Basically, pretty much everyone that left a bad review is apparently a middle child that was very upset that a middle child was portrayed this way. Which to me is just laughable. Y'all saying that a middle child acting like this is a bad name for middle children, I don't know. Like, that just seems so, like, off left field to me. I don't think this was middle child syndrome. I don't think that's what this was. And they were all really complaining, like, oh, she's so whiny. Oh, she's, like, awful. Who would do stuff like this? A child, which is what she is. A 14, 15-year-old girl who has always felt left out of her family and is now completely pushed to the side because this girl got dropped in their lives. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. Like, this is a child's story. She's a young child. She's not even in, like, she's a preteen or, like, a very young teenager. Her prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. She's not making the best decisions. And I remember this time in my life. I remember being that age. And I remember feeling like everything was the biggest thing. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we're getting. We're getting this huge balloon of emotions from Jules, because when you're that age, that is how everything feels. Everything feels like the end of the world. Everything feels magnified. Your feelings feel like the biggest thing in your life. So, I think it was written very well because I felt like it portrayed a child of that age excellently. I thought it did. Like, I was reading this book, I felt teleported back to that time in my life when everything felt that emergent. I don't know. I resonated with this book in a completely new way. I really liked the portrayal of Jules. I know lots of people had issues with it, but like, she felt like a normal 14-year-old to me. Quite honestly, 14, 15, maybe 16. No, I don't think she was 16 yet. It all felt very accurate to me. Now, do I wish there was more cold stuff? Absolutely. There were a few things that I felt like just weren't really well explained. Especially having to do with the mother, who is the child psychologist. I feel like there was a huge empty spot there that was supposed to be filled in. But the other thing that we have to think about for this is it is based on true events, and sometimes those true events don't always have the ending that we want. And I feel like the ending here was probably not to a lot of people's likings. The end of this book seemed insanely conspiratorial. I don't actually know if the ending of this book is true, but or if this was just like a fictional add-in by the author. If it is true, wow, that's crazy. But I don't know. So yeah, that was like a really, really long explanation for this book. I gave it 4 stars because I did actually pretty much like it. There were a few things that I felt like were a miss. I could not give it the 3 stars, even though there were, I wanted more cult action. Like, I wanted a lot more cult stuff. I couldn't give it the 3 stars because that would mean that I didn't like it, and I did, so I would give it, if we're breaking it down, if we're getting really technical, it'd be a low 4. But, yeah, I'm excited to watch the series on Netflix to finish. I watched like the opener, and I think I watched the first 2 episodes, but now I'll go back and like watch the whole thing from the beginning, and then I'll come back and talk to you guys about it on the channel. So yeah, 4 stars. I don't know. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. The last book I read in July was Mistakes Were Made by Meryl Wilsner. I don't think this was actually on a maybes list. I can't remember. I talked about this book in my Sapphic Summer post, okay? This was recommended to me by a friend whose opinion I really trust. Here's the thing, I didn't love this book. I wanted to love this book. That was the thing. I wanted to love this book. And the high moments of this book were very high. But there were a lot of moments in this book that I just weren't for me. And I struggled. Into the premise. So, we've got 2 main characters. And it is told in dual perspective. So we have Cassie, who is a college student. And she's in her senior year. She's got like a little tiny friends group. She's not very social. She goes out to a bar one night and picks up an older woman named Erin. Erin is the other main character of this story, and she is Cassie's best friend's mom. Which neither one of them know that when they hook up. They don't figure that out until the next morning when they meet over brunch. And after is what, it spirals into a forbidden relationship, basically, because Erin is quite a bit older, and because she's Cassie's best friend's mom, she feels like she shouldn't get involved with this young woman. In my opinion, this book was way too long. I just struggled with the pace of this book. I don't know why it was so many pages, honestly. The plot was not developed enough for this book to be as long as it was, if that makes sense. Here's the thing. I am totally on board with books being more porn than plot. My problem is, this book, like, Cheryl Wilsner put the work in to develop a good plot, to develop the characters so they weren't just so one-dimensional, and then they stalled out on the development. Do you know what I mean? Wilsner built in to these characters trauma, stories, a past, both of them built it in big, and then just didn't follow through with it. And I was really disappointed with that, because I felt like I got to the end of this book and I didn't really know anything about these 2 people. How did I spend that many pages with both of these people with complex pasts, and I barely got one of their stories? I don't know. Like, it felt like they did all this work and then they dropped the ball at the last minute. I don't know. It was so disappointing, because I just felt like the plot was severely underdeveloped when it didn't need to be. Like, Wilsner built it in to be high plot, really great development, and then they just didn't do it. So that was my biggest issue with the book, was like, why did you build such a complex characters, complex plot, deep plot, when you weren't gonna like develop it? Just write one-dimensional characters if you want it to be more porn than plot. Write one-dimensional characters and leave it at that. So yeah, I was really disappointed in the development there. I just felt like I felt like they left me hanging, honestly. Now, the spicy bits, very good. I really, really liked that. I think those were written very well. On another note, I did not like any of the side characters in this book. I struggled with the characters in this book. Like, we had the 2 main characters, and like I said, I felt like the development was stalled. And then we had these side characters that were just, you know, quite frankly, awful. I'm not going to give any more away. I feel like if I dig any more into it, I'm just going to like tell you the whole story. But yeah, I didn't really like any of the other side characters, which made it really difficult to enjoy the book because there's a lot of side characters in this book. I think there were some really good nods. There was a lot of representation in this book. We got some lots of bi representation. There was some non-binary or trans representation in this book, and or could be and or. It wasn't really delved into, but it was discussed. Yeah, so on that front, I think that the representation was done really well. We did get some POC rep in there a little bit. Not a ton, but it was there. So I thought the representation was good. I thought that the, you know, idea of this book was really well done. I will say the tropes for this book were done pretty well. This is like a forbidden love, secret love, if you will. We definitely have an age gap romance here. If you're into like MILF books, this is a really good one. I gave this 3 stars, and like I said, 3 stars for me means that I didn't like it, but it was probably a me issue. This was definitely categorize this as a me issue because I know this has high reviews and lots of people have really liked it. So yeah. Also, I'm a little tired of romance, even though I haven't like read that many of them this year. I think I've been reading a lot of romance for work. Maybe that's where I'm getting a little tired of it because I'm reading a lot for work. But like, I don't know. I also felt like in this book, we were revisiting the same issue the entire book. The entire plot of the book was centered around one issue. And we just kept recycling this issue. And I was like, it was really too long of a book to be recycling one issue. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. But it might work for you. Okay, so that's all that I read in July. I got more reading done in July than I honestly thought I would, but I did cram a lot of the reading into the last 2 weeks of the month. I mean, yeah, it still counts, so whatever. I finalized my lineup for August, and I'm really excited. The only thing we haven't finalized is the book club book, but I will finalize that soon. I'm excited about my August lineup because it's a little bit on the darker side, like moving away from romance and stuff like that. We are getting some darker themes in August. If you want to check out the Maybe series, you should go do that. Yeah. Make sure you hit all the buttons down below so you know when I'm posting. I post every week. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. So if you loved any of these books or you hated any of these books, drop me a comment, tell me all about it. I'd love to hear from you. Other than that, I will see you guys next time. Bye!